Hi everyone, it's Cathy Zielske. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm excited to be sharing a card featuring some new products from Simon Says Stamp that are part of the STAMPtember release. And if STAMPtember is here, that means Halloween is around the corner, and I love Halloween more than any other holiday. I'm sorry, I just do. Halloween is my jam, and so I'm really excited to share this simple, bright, maybe spooky card with you today. So let's take a look at the products. I am using two sets today. Now the one on the left is called Bwahaha. Thank you. That's actually what it's called. And that is a new STAMPtember exclusive release from Simon Says Stamp. Lots of spooky goodness. I love it. Now on the right, I have Handlettered Halloween, and that is a regular release this month at Simon, and I decided to combine them both. And of course, they both come with coordinating die sets, which always gives you more opportunity, I think, for what you want to do with the stamps. So, starting with those. I've also got some distress oxides. I've got black soot, carved pumpkin, and seedless preserves. Great Halloween palette there, and I'm going to be using those to make a sky with some jumbo sponge daubers and a mini sponge dauber. Got some Versamark ink and some ultra fine white embossing powder. Alabaster is the color from Brutus Monroe. I've got two dies. These nest together. This is from Therm and Gina K Designs. I've got some foam squares and some foam tape and some purple tape. And I'm also going to be using this little white gel pen from Signo. Now, I've also got this. I've got a Swiss Dot Cuttlebug folder, but you could use any embossing folder for this project. I'm also using a little bit of masking paper. And for cardstock today, I've got some Gina K Designs Plum Punch. I've got some black licorice from Lawn Fawn. I've got a little Neenah Solar White right there, and then I've got two other Gina K colors, the Sweet Mango and Jelly Bean Green. I'm unsure which one I'm going to use, but I'm going to cut them both out, and you're going to see how that plays out. And of course, I will be stamping with my MISTI tool today because the MISTI makes it possible for me to stamp with success. Thank you. So let's get started with some die cutting. I have trimmed my black cardstock to 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I am going to cut the larger oval out because this is going to provide the frame for the front of my card. So I'm going to tape that down and run it through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine so that I now have my frame with the oval. Now this is where I'm going to use my Cuttlebug. And again, you can use any embossing folder. I just thought because this design is simple, even though the process is going to be a little complex, as you will see, I like the idea of adding a little texture to a Halloween card because it makes it spooky. Now, I love the Swiss dot thing. I have been watching so many Gina K Designs videos from Stamp TV, and she loves her Swiss dots, and so I was inspired by the Swiss dots. So this folder is great, and this is how I build my sandwich. I don't know if this is how you're supposed to do it, but this gives me some good results with that tan mat going down first and just one plate. And then I emerge with this lovely tone-on-tone texture. Isn't that cool? I love embossing folders. I need to use them more. But while I've got this out, I'm going to take the smaller of the ovals and just run that through on a piece of the Sweet Mango cardstock, which I have also trimmed down. And this is going to be used for an inset frame for this panel. Now I also went ahead off camera and cut some of the Jelly Bean Green because I just wasn't sure which color I wanted to use, and we'll see how that plays out. Now I've trimmed a small piece of the masking paper, and I'm going to take the coordinating die from the set that's designed to cut out the moon, and I'm going to save both pieces. I'm going to do some masking here, but I'm going to start out by using the positive of the circle. And I'm just going to lay my panel down, and this is over top of a piece of Neenah Solar White. This is the 80-pound cardstock. And I'm just going to lay the spooky house down because I really do want it to be laid out on my card just like it appears here. So I'm just sort of positioning that, and now I know where roughly or exactly where I want my mask to be because I want to save some space to color in a spooky moon. All right, that looks good. And now I'm going to do some ink blending here with two Distress Oxides. Seedless Preserves is the most gorgeous purple. I absolutely love this color. I had no idea it was this pretty. And I really want my sky to be more purpley than anything. So I'm just going to bring in a tiny bit of black soot just for a little dimension. This is great because it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to look a little textured and a little spooky. So now it's time to stamp. Now I will tell you this, I didn't let this dry very long. I probably would have set my oxide panel aside for, you know, maybe an hour just to really make sure it turns out fine, but I just think sometimes when you take masks off, and you'll see this later, yeah, I could have let it dry longer. But I'm going to stamp with VersaFine. I wanted it to be as inky and black as possible, and this is one of my juiciest black pads. So I'm going to give it 2 hits with the VersaFine. And I placed it so that a little bit of the top of the lower house area on the right would just peek into the circle. And because I have my mask there, you know, when you lift up the mask, it'll look like it's tucked behind the moon. All right, and I show you how long I press down for because I think sometimes you really do need to give it a good press and let the ink have time to transfer off your stamp. But that is pretty black. I think that looks really great. And now I'm going to go ahead and clean this. And these inks clean off really well, but I love using a tidy towel or some kind of stamp chamois. This is a Gina K tidy towel. And it's just a great way to get stuff off. I'm sure I'll use more stamp cleaner on my stamps at some point in time, but this thing is great. And I have this awesome little white holder that I got online to keep my towel damp and not too smelly, and I will link that below. Now I'm just going to add some bats. This bat is going to look like it's behind the moon. Then I've got one going above the moon, and I'm adding one more little bat down on the lower left just to have my spooky factor upped. Now I'm bringing out the Handlettered Halloween, and I'm going to use that Happy Halloween because I think that's a cute little sentiment. And I'm using the embossing magic pad here. Because black cardstock, I'm telling you, man, this stuff will grab your embossing powder like no one's business. So don't be shy to lay down a lot of powder. And if you're having problems with your embossing powder sticking where you don't want it to stick, add more powder before you stamp. I'm just using Versamark here. Going to give that a really good press down. And I'm using the alabaster powder from Brutus Monroe. It's really nice white powder. Just going to shake that on, tap it off, shake it on again, and tap it off. Now, when you do this, if you notice you have little bits of powder sticking places you don't want, just take a brush and brush it away. That's what I do. And the other thing you can do, and I learned this from watching Laura Basson, you can take your craft pick, like if there's little pieces that are still stuck in areas that you don't want to hit with a brush, pick them out with your craft pick. Got my tool all heated up, and now Happy Halloween is shiny and melty. And I went ahead and stamped 2 more bats and the fence from the Bwahaha set. And I'm going to heat set those as well. And again, I hit that with a lot of the embossing powder before I stamped, and these came out great. Didn't have to dust away much at all. I think that looks like a spooky face, doesn't it? You see it? Yeah. Now to cut out Happy Halloween, I have the coordinating die, which is great, but I went ahead and created a template out of a Post-it note. Because what this allows me to do is see exactly how I want it to trim. I think sometimes it's tricky with these word dies, and you can feel that die. It will snap into the place in your template, and you can go ahead and get a perfect cut. Now I went and cut off the extra Post-it note part because I just didn't want to mess up the bats. But once I ran that through, I ended up with a perfectly cut sentiment. And that's what I was going for. Just poke out the centers with my little pokey tool, and voila. Now for the bats and the fence, they were not as tricky. You can see through the dies, it was pretty clear, so that did not require a template. But now I'm going to take my mask off, the purple, and I'm going to peel off the little leftover space, place that down over the circle. And this was hard for me. I have a hard time lining things up when I'm filming. I try to stand up and look all the way down, But the idea here is to press that circle down, protect the purple areas around it, and then I wanted to have a smaller sponge dauber. So that's where I brought in the little finger guy here. It goes right in your finger like an inky appendage, and that allowed me to come in and just add some color for my spooky moon. Now I know moons technically are yellow, but I thought orange was better. And plus it's better in a Halloween, well, it's a part of a triadic scheme, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But there was a sliver of white showing, and it bugged me, so I cut out one more mask and went back over to kind of hide that white. And here's the thing, I'm already spending way too much time on a card. One more little step, adding in one more mask to get that moon just right, worth it. Okay, now I'm going to add a little black bat on top of that lovely Spooky Harvest orange moon and stamping it twice just to get it super black. And now, time to build the card. So I've got this Plum Punch cardstock from Gina K Designs, and I'm going to score this right at 5.5. It will be top folding, and using this amazing Teflon bone folder. If you don't know about the Teflon bone folder, it's not just hype. It's not hype. It's a fantastic tool with the Score Buddy. And I've got that ready to go. And now it's time to start positioning things. But here's what I did. I didn't know if I wanted green for the inside frame, the inset frame, or orange. And as soon as I laid the orange down, I thought, nope, you know what? I want it to be green because the Halloween colors are what is called a triadic color scheme. If you look at purple, orange, and green on a color wheel, they are equidistant from each other in thirds. And that means, from a color theory standpoint, they work together beautifully. So Halloween, it's not happenstance, people. It actually, the colors are designed by nature. Thank you. Now, once I have figured out where that panel goes, I went ahead and just took a pencil and just marked 2 little corners so I knew exactly where to adhere it, because as you can see, it doesn't go right in the center. I wanted the house to work, not the panel itself. So just going to add a little dot adhesive to the back here, and then I can go ahead, line those right up on the pencil marks, which aren't going to show anyway. And now I know that once I have this positioned, it's going to be perfectly framed. I went ahead off camera and added some foam tape. I took 3 strips actually, just cut one of them in half and put those on the sides. And now I'm going to place this popped up panel right over my scene. Takes me a minute. I'm actually standing up, staring over my iPhone as I do this because centering is kind of my jam. Doesn't mean I'm always good at it. Now I'm going to add just a little dot adhesive to the fence, and I'm going to tuck that inside the frame because I want it to be peeking out. I don't want to see the lower fence. I just kind of wanted it to be right there. Isn't that cute? I just thought that was so cute. All right, adding a little bit of foam adhesive to the Happy Halloween, but I realized I needed to double up, and sometimes this will happen. So I'm using a thin foam square, stacking it on top of a piece of the foam tape, and that's going to give me the proper dimension because the frame itself is popped up, but there are also 2 pieces of cardstock that are stacked, so you need to play with your dimension to make sure that they're on the same plane. Same thing with the bats here. I knew I wanted the bigger bat to pop out onto the frame, so the same thing. I needed a piece of the foam tape and then a little piece of the thin foam square so that that could pop up. And the reason I wanted to have the 2 white bats and the Happy Halloween in the fence, because that created a nice little visual triangle of white. So you can see there's 3 white areas on my card. Yeah, I'm always thinking. Well, not always, but the last step was to add a starry night, and I just used the Signo pen for this. I'm not very good with pens, but here's the thing. I had done a sample card when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I had splattered on some acrylic paint. And when I stamped my black house over that starry background that I had created, it didn't look right. It came through and it looked mucky, so when I decided to create this version of the card, just adding in those little stars by hand, I thought was a perfect touch and a way to preserve that inky black of the house and the bats and all that good stuff. So that is my Happy Halloween card. I think this is the first of many because Halloween is my jam. It is my favorite holiday, and I say start celebrating now. Thanks so much for watching. I would love to have you subscribe and stop back again soon.